I'd like to call this meeting to order. It's August 23rd, 2023. It's 4 p.m., 4:05 p.m. This is the Finance Committee. This meeting will be video recorded and broadcast over local access channel 8 and through the town website at www.eastham-ma.gov. And I emphasize 8, Comcast has made some changes, and if you're interested in watching the videos of the town meetings, it's no longer on channel 18, it's on channel 8. And I did check channel 18 a short while ago, and there's no message on there saying that they've changed it from 18 to 8. So if you're looking for it and you go on to channel 18, you won't find anything. So again, it's channel 8. Item number 2 on the agenda is the review and possible vote on minutes of our July 12th, 2023 vote. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of July 12th,
So moved.
2023? Al, Roy? I'm okay. I don't know where I got Al from. Do I have a second?
I'll second, Mary.
Paul?
Paul.
Any discussion? All in favor of the minutes of July 12th, 2023? Paul, Rick, Russ, Roy, Steve, Peter, and me. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 0. Actually, I don't believe you can vote on those minutes because you were not
A voting member list.
voting member.
Okay.
So it is 6-0. And I just want to thank Mira for putting the minutes together. It's been fantastic that we have you to do this because we haven't had somebody to do it in the past, and so it's wonderful. And I have been in touch with Paul. And I just want to make sure that we understand the process going forward. You're going to be doing the minutes. You'll be sending them out once you have completed them. All of us have, I'm going to give you all a week to look them over. And if you have any comments, questions, changes, what have you, to respond to both Mira and Paul. Paul is our secretary, who will then work together and end up with the minutes that we finally have so that we don't have to spend time at this meeting going over them and reviewing them and making changes after the fact. So again, Paul, please don't send your answers, I shouldn't say your answers, your comments to all of us because of open meeting law. So just to Paul and Mira, not the rest of us. And they'll work it out and proceed from there. Is there anything else you wanted to comment on, Paul, in that regard?
Yeah, the only question I have, once Mira and I resolve it, Mary, who's the keeper of the final copy to go out next time?
I'm sorry, who's the what?
Final, who keeps the revised minutes to go out?
Yeah, I would think Mira would
Okay,
make
fine,
sure that
fine.
they're taken care of and sent to Linda Sassy or Kendra at the town clerk's office.
Terrific. Then that's what we'll do.
Yeah, okay. And again, we'll give everybody a week. So if you don't hear from anybody within that week after they're originally sent out, assume that they don't have any comments to make.
Great.
Okay, we are now down to item number 3 on the agenda, presentation and discussion on fiscal year end 6/30/23. And I'm going to ask Rich to take it from there.
Actually, I think 3 and 4, we got the language mixed up, so I apologize.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
3 and 4 looks like we got the language mixed up. So I apologize. It's an update on the FY23 results. So we'll be reviewing FY23.
Oh, you're talking about update and presentation is, yeah, okay.
That's next month. And then tonight is the presentation discussion on the operating budget, 5-year operating budget projection. But the update for FY23 is our town accountant, Tina Tilton, is going through the process of closing the books right now. And we're performing year-end reconciliations. The big ones have to do with cash between the treasurer and the accountant, and receivables, which is the tax collector and the accountant, to make sure everything matches up. We do have a system, and most towns do, it's state law, that provides for segregation of duties so that, people handling cash don't handle the reporting and vice versa. And good segregation of duties as far as authorization of transactions. So these reconciliations ensure that we tie everything out before we finally close the books. So we expect to be done by the end of about Labor Day, I would say. And she's got her stuff, her reports, year-end reports ready to be submitted to the Department of Revenue. And that'll start the process of free cash. So we're hoping to get free cash certified much earlier this year. We're probably going to be amongst the first in the queue. We've been in touch with our Department of Revenue representative because we've been setting the tax rate, which really has nothing to do with the prior year. It's more of the current year, but because of that, it kind of all goes hand in hand. So we're closing the books and setting our tax rate, and part of setting the tax rate is making sure you don't have any deficits in the books that you're closing. So it's all kind of one and the same. And they're expecting and waiting for our year-end submissions, and once they get them, though, like I said, we're near the beginning of the queue as far as evaluating that to get our free cash certified. The free cash looks to be very favorable this year. And I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, but this is what we'll talk about next month. We did have quite a bit of free cash that we did not utilize from last year. And so that's kind of, we're starting off the till, so to speak, with that extra amount in our fund balance. And we had good results on our appropriations, meaning savings on amounts that were budgeted for FY23, had savings from those amounts, probably in the $1 million range. And again, on the local receipts, we conservatively budget estimated receipts, and we outperformed even our non-conservative estimates of that. So we have a lot of surplus on our local receipts compared to actual to budget. And of course, the short-term rental money exceeded $1.5 million this past fiscal year, which we don't budget as part of the operating budget at all, except for some debt service from the town center plaza. So all those factors are going to result in a pretty high free cash certification. And that's what we'll discuss next month. And what we also do is part of that year-end review. And I've asked Mira to help me with it. She's done a good job of putting together our Cape-wide comparisons. What are some of the key financial metrics and how do we compare to other towns on Cape Cod? That covers things like unreserved fund balance, stabilization fund, amount of reserve, percent of reserves compared to our budget, tax burden, incomes, things like that, just as a way of generating discussion and thought. Because not too long after next month, we'll get into the capital budget and then ultimately the operating budget. So all this stuff is kind of lined up to prime your pump to be ready for a thorough discussion of the budget process.
Rich, when you say free cash from FY 23, we had allocated that, and not all of it has been expended.
No. We had a certified amount. This isn't, I don't even remember the number, so I'm going to make a number up. Let's say it was $4.5 million. And we voted to use through town meeting, for example, $3 million.
Right.
So we got 1.5 that has not been allocated or utilized at all. That remained in our fund balance. And it adds to our fund balance as of June 30th, 23. So if the starting point of the calculation of free cash is your general fund balance, and it's high because you didn't use it all from the prior year, you're going to be higher the next year, all things being equal. So we started off with that extra, whereas in the past, we've always maintained a reserve amount of free cash,
right,
but last year's amount was well and above what we normally would have spent down to.
Mira, by any chance, do you have a copy of today's agenda?
Yes, absolutely. Just the agenda?
I keep finding myself between my printer computer and me, and we're never in the same place at any time. Thank you.
You need any of the other documents?
The budget's small.
Oh, okay.
I have no chance to make. If there are other documents, I'll take them.
So I mentioned, where we generate free cash, and that's also going to be part of the presentation next month, which is taking a look at which appropriations in our budget have the savings. And also which local receipts are in excess of, the budgets. So it's kind of like a budget to actual exercise. So you kind of get a sense of where we're extra conservative.
Are there any questions? So next month, we will be going over this.
Yeah, and actually, Mary, just an aside, I went back and looked at that future schedule, and actually today was the day I put in, and we hadn't talked about it.
Right.
We had talked about having each of the financial officers come in. And this was supposed to be the assessor's time, which would have been great timing.
Mhm.
But I'm thinking maybe we do that next month too, because Mary was there last night where we had our tax classification hearing, and I think there's probably some interesting information related to that people might want to see as far as trends of tax levy, tax burden, and values of properties.
Mhm.
And just right aside, in case I don't want to leave you all wondering, last year, you might recall, we had a huge increase in property values, excess of 25%. Again, a good increase this year, but nowhere near as the 25%. And on average is about a 10% residential increase in residential property values. And so that brought our tax rate to $7.01. This is what's going to be set for this upcoming fiscal year, which is a little bit less than what we had when we had our budget hearing, and we project what, if you adopt this budget, it results in this tax burden. We actually came in a little bit less than that. So I think it was at the budget hearing last spring. I thought we were estimating something like 710 or 714, I think it was.
756.
So, okay. And we came in at 701, which is about a $40 or $50 difference less than what we thought it might be. So.
But I just want to add that you're commenting about the additional increase in the assessed value. So 3 years ago, it was about 10%. Last year, it was 25%. And this year, I got about 13%. But in any event, in 3 years, we have increased our assessed value by almost 50%. That's a lot, which obviously is allowing us to reduce the amount per million when we pay our taxes. But the other thing I want to comment on is that when we talk about the $7.01 per thousand for the taxes, and we put together what that would equate to, we are not including in that figure the 3% CPA surcharge that everybody pays on top of their taxes. So I think we all have to remember that not only do we pay the real estate taxes in this case, going forward, $7.01, but because of that increase, we're paying in addition 3% of what our taxes are for the CPA overcharge. And that's not listed in anything.
No, it's not because, you don't really have a choice on the property tax. You have a choice in
Oh,
how
I
much you
know.
want to
Oh,
spend.
I know.
But you got to spend something, and that gets assessed and allocated in accordance with state law, whereas the CPA surcharge, that's voluntary. The town can elect to do that or not participate in
Yeah,
that or
yeah.
not participate.
But I'm just saying at the moment it is 3%. Any questions from
So-
anybody?
Yeah, so when I see the net property tax levy amount, that does not include a CPA, right?
No, it does not. That's 3%. So if your taxes were, you owed 6,000 for your taxes, it'd be another $180.
Right. So the 34 million 2024 tax levy number we see here, that's 11.5% up. And that excludes any CPA.
As Rich said, we don't have that not information, we don't have that calculation included because the CPA committee could decide to not proceed with the 3% or could reduce it to 2% or even.
Town meeting.
Yeah. So it's not a given. like the real estate taxes.
That would have to be done at a town meeting, Peter.
Yep.
Any other questions? So I'd like to go to the operating budget, the 5-year operating budget.
Yeah, so this is the main presentation and discussion for tonight.
Yep.
And that's the packet with the windmill on the front. It's 22 pages. And to save you a lot of angst, from page 12 through 22, that's what we discussed last month. That's the balances of debt and the projects that's gonna cause us to incur debt. And that's why I wanted to do it last month, because to do it all in one night gets to be a bit much. So all those pages in the back are the debts of the balances of debt, outstanding bonds and things like that, which result in debt service that we use in this 5-year projection. So if you were to go to page 1, the very first page, it's just kind of a summary page. And then the third line down under appropriations is debt service. That debt service jives with what those pages say, and that's what we discussed last month.
Any
I did
changes
have-
on those items, or is it
I'm
any
sorry?
changes on those back pages, or is it?
Not
consistent?
since last time.
Okay.
no. And again, these are projections, so you
Right.
raise a good point up front is this isn't what's gonna happen 5 years from now, I can guarantee it. It's
Right.
gonna be, but this is our baseline.
Yep.
And I did have the opportunity, because the timing of the tax rate hearing and all that, to update, at the bottom of this summary
Mhm.
page under the 24 column, the values and the tax rate. Because it's important to have 24 kind of solid, because that serves as the basis for rolling everything forward, right? And I also had the benefit this year of we settled our collective bargaining agreements. So I know what our salaries are given our staffing and our current employees for the next 3 years.
Mhm.
And so those known costs are also baked into, known salary costs are baked into the town operating budget. The first line there includes salaries. I know what those are going to be because we have a grade and step schedule,
Mhm.
assuming the status quo, If anybody has a great idea and wants to add a person here or a position here, might have a lot of merit to add. I'm not saying that, but it does change the projection.
Before you leave debt service, could you give us your annual primer on difference between
No,
exempt
exempt and
and
non-exempt.
non-exempt debt?
Right, so Roy brings up a good question. When you look at the debt service in 2024, 6,507,000, next year, 8,118,000. That's, first of all, just the town debt service. It's not including the school district debt that's wrapped into their assessment. That's in the educational services budget line, the second line. So that's just town debt service. And by and large, almost all of our debt at this point is exempt debt, meaning, and this might have made more sense if you saw the classification hearing last night, or if they're discussion with the assessor next month, but there's a calculation we go through under the state law with Proposition 2.5, where we can raise our tax levy. You start with last year's tax levy, you're allowed to add 2.5% to that. You're allowed to add what's called new growth to that. And that results in a tax levy that you're allowed to raise. So when you're going through the budget process, you want to make sure that your reliance on property taxes to fund your budget comes under that amount, because a cap on what you're allowed to raise. So it's always a part of our annual exercise, except for this exempt debt. You go through that calculation, you get to the end of the amount of property tax you can raise for your budget. And if town meeting and at the ballot votes to make a debt service payment as exempt, it means it's exempt from Proposition 2.5. So in this case, next year, we'll do our levy calculation and maybe we'll come up with, say, $35 million. And then we will add $8 million to that to provide for this debt service. And we'll be able to raise 43 million. And so the reason for that, presumably, or mechanically, I guess, is to prevent towns from slashing core services because debt service rises, right? So obviously, if we had to come up with $8 million of debt service within our $35 million levy, but we've used that $35 million of levy to pay for police and fire and DPW, the taxpayers could ask us to live within that, but they realize that that's they didn't want to cut all those services to provide for the $8 million of debt service. So we're allowed to add it and raise that extra tax. But when it goes away, also our ability to raise it and the tax levy also goes away. So it's only allows us to add to the tax levy for the actual payment of the debt service, not for anything else. Duration of that bond, right?
The bond, does it have to have 2/3 majority at town meeting?
It's a 2/3 majority
About,
at town meeting for the authorization of the bond. And then a majority at the ballot.
it has to pass both.
It has to
and
pass both.
it's Be exempt then.
So another point on exempt and non-exempt debt. Regardless of what category it falls into, we still pay interest on it.
Yes. And that doesn't affect the interest rate at all. It's all it is a state law classification.
Right.
It's exempt from Proposition 2.5, but it's not exempt from. interest.
But you're, and I don't, so you guys get me talking and then you loosen me up, but this is my pet peeve.
That's our idea.
My pet peeve of bond rating, because we have, we'll talk about this too. We have ratings call this fall at some point. I think we'll be having one. And the analysts don't understand that. My way of thinking, if I was an analyst and I had bonds that were secured with exempt debt, I would rate that, all else being equal, I'd rate that community higher than the exact same community that has bonds but not exempt debt. Because the exemption allows you to raise the taxes, assuming that you're not overbearing and overburdening your taxpayers. But, if you're in a moderate or modest level of tax burden to your citizens, the exempt debt ensures that you can raise that money to pay for your debt and you can maintain core services. Whereas the other community doesn't have that guarantee. They might have to, eliminate other services to provide for that debt service, which makes it less certainty of payment in my mind. So I'd rather be the one that has a guaranteed funding source for the debt. So it should reflect in your, maybe not on the interest rate on any particular bond, but in your overall credit worthiness should enter into that calculation.
So I have a couple of questions.
Can I
and
go
I'm-
through real quick, Mary, before,
I'm sorry.
can I go through real quick before we?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you stopped talking, so I thought yeah.
Get in there.
That'll teach me to stop. I do want to just real quick, and we'll focus just on this one summary page, and everything behind here is kind of details of what shows up on this page.
Right.
So if you want to get in, how did I come up with what the town operating budget should be in any particular year? Go to the appropriations detail page, and it shows you, the escalation, the percent that a particular line item of the budget might have gone up. But the bottom line is, if you look at 2024, we always have to have a balanced budget. And in these cases, this green line about 2/3 of the way down is showing that we've got surplus each year. I guess except for, I actually did an extra year this year. It's only supposed to be 5 years. I did 6 because 2030 is the year where our wastewater debt service picks up. And I just wanted to showing you that impact. And if you look at that real quick on that debt service line at the top, that's why it goes from 8,000,001 in 2029 to 9,850,000. It's a big jump. But it doesn't mean the taxpayer is picking all that up, and we'll talk about that in a second. But that's the only year at the moment that's showing a shortfall, but that's 6 years out. A lot changes between now and then. But all these other years are showing a surplus. In particular, 24, 25, and 26, because that's where we talked about the need for the override in FY 24. And the idea would be that funded our collective bargaining agreements that we negotiated. And that would carry us through for this 3-year period of that agreement. And all things being equal, it is having that effect. Now, of course, other things can come up and, maybe the schools might, throw this into a little bit of disarray. But all things being equal, we have a little bit of capacity to handle with any differentials from what the expectation in this projection are. So the next, 24, 25, 26, I feel relatively confident about, all things being equal, being the status quo of where we're going to land. And then once we get past that, it becomes less certain. And I certainly don't know what contract negotiations 3 years from now are going to look like and what that might cost us. But I made an assumption. And so if you were to look at page 8 of 22. So this is a key assumption that I need you to be aware of in this projection. So the top half of this page represents the funding side of the budget and shows some of the detail that goes into the summary. But the top half shows the property tax levy, and this is what we we're just talking about, the calculation of your property tax levy. And what I wanted to point out to you is, in order to maintain this balance, I don't necessarily know what contract settlements will be for salaries in the future, but I have to make some assumptions in a projection. And so I made some assumptions of at 4 to 5%, I think it was. And based on that level of increase, as we've been talking about, every third year, you likely would need an override to accommodate that rate of growth. And so in this projection, in order to keep all these years as a surplus, I'm showing that we'd have around the order of magnitude of $1 million in override in FY27. Which is kind of what I had told you last year was my thought process of what things were looking like. And that held out to be true.
That's mainly due to salaries.
Let's do to all the budgetary
Yeah,
increases.
but I'm just saying salaries tend to be the biggest part of all
Salaries are
expenses.
the biggest single piece of the overall budget as a whole, right?
Mhm.
There's other things that increase faster. Health insurance is probably a 10%
Mm.
trend. General liability insurance is a 6% trend. Pension assessments is pegged in at 5.8%. So there's some things that are a little bit faster. And those are big ticket items. Those are what we always call the budget busters. Yeah.
But the collective bargaining increases are in that 1.1.
right.
Correct.
An expectation of some
Right.
increase.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean that they will, I could, and I'm just saying that because the way the world nowadays here on the Outer Cape, right? Back in the day, if I was doing this same projection, I wouldn't be using 4 or 5% salary. I'm being ultra conservative here, or I don't know if you call it, maybe the opposite of conservative, I don't know, but I'm providing, I'm assuming higher than I would in the past. In the past, in other towns that I've worked in, COLAs were 1% and steps were 1%. I would have used a much lower, but that's not the world we're in today, and not the world we've been coming out of for the past 5 years. So I think it would be disingenuous to peg salary growth at 1 or 2%.
Mhm.
And so I'm trying to be as upfront and anticipate is the worst case scenario, so to speak. If we can do better, we'd love to do better. And the other thing, we used to be able to rely on this, and we can't necessarily rely on it. So I don't want to get anybody's hopes up, I guess, but all these projections assume our current staff in the current positions, right? And so our current staff in the good old days, so to speak, would always be more expensive than the new staff. And so as staff retired or moved on, you'd replace them with a lower level salary. And so that would make my higher level of salary adjustments probably high. But I don't know if we're in that environment anymore. And so I'm not going to count on that. Because, the experience more recently in the last couple of years has been somebody leaves and you replacing them at the same or higher
Yeah,
salary
yeah.
just to get someone. So,
And I know this past year, when we had the override of 710, 160 of that was due to educational increases.
right.
I'm not expecting those to decrease either. Is that been taken care, not been taken care of, has that been considered in this 1.1?
No, the 1.1 is the funding, but I can
Yeah,
tell
that's
you
what I
is
thought.
on the expenditure side, I'm including educational costs at an annual increase of about 3%. Back to our summary page, page 1. And then I'll take a breath, Mary.
I'm sorry?
Then I'll take a breath. I just want to show you that, the anticipated impact of these increases over the next 5 to 6 years with the various elements of funding that we expect to have lined up for them. So the top half is the appropriate, or the top third is the appropriations. The second third of that page one summary is the funding sources to balance this all out. And then the bottom third is the property tax impacts, just like we do when we go through our annual budget process, and how I have here that we've arrived at 701. And the value is at 4,791,000,000. Results in a tax burden of 4,941 for the median valued home. I tried to project that forward as well based on all these results. And so over the 6-year period, based on this projection, we can expect to go from 4,941 for the median valued home to 6,274 in 6 years. That again is based on a lot of assumptions which will not come true. Some will come out, to the positive, some will come out to the negative. And I am anticipating the little percentage you see above that. Again, this is just my guess. So anybody wants to know something different with a different guess, let me know and we can run that. But I'm assuming values are going to go up at 4.5% for the next couple of years. I'm assuming that things are going to moderate from what they've been because it's been very hot for the last several years. And then I'm anticipating that it's going to level out for a couple of years, which is a historical trend. But do I have the timing of this trend down to the historical trend perfectly? Probably not. So there'll be fluctuations in that too. But for purposes of a multi-year projection, that's what I've gone with.
Why are you showing a drop in local receipts?
It's not a drop, it's an increase from 4.4 to
I'm sorry.
5.7. That was one of my questions too.
So there's a page in here. I don't know if I want to go through it right now, but we can if you want, or individually we can.
You can be patient.
But it's part of the debt service funding plan. So remember, we talked about the debt service lines and that they're increasing, but that not all the debt service increases are being impacted, are going to be impactful to the property taxpayer. So the biggest thing here is wastewater. So we have about $1.5 million of short-term rental, which we've been sequestering and not using for the operating budget. We do use a piece of it for Town Center Plaza debt service. But everything else, once we still have to start paying for wastewater, up to $1.5 million, I've applied to wastewater. And that's why it's showing up under local receipts. It reflects our utilization of short-term rental receipts to pay for the increased debt service that you see above.
Well, I'm confused on the 24 local receipts then, the 4.4 million. You're telling me that doesn't include most of the short-term rental?
Correct.
Right.
Because why?
Because that was our policy decision that we did not want to dedicate it to the operating budget, so it got absorbed and therefore would make it unavailable in the future. So you put towards wastewater debt service. But
What
it
do you-
did generate, Rick, free cash. And you might recall,
That's what I mean. It doesn't get absorbed.
but if we dedicated it to balance the budget, it would have been, and then it would not have become free cash. Was it 750 or 9? I think it was 750,000 of free cash last year. We put in a wastewater stabilization fund. And so we kind of did use it, but just didn't use it in the operating budget, used it to build up a reserve.
Yeah, so, yeah.
You expect the short-term rental amount to increase? People are charging more and more and
Well, a big part of that increase had to do with the change from 4% to 6%.
Mm.
And that's kind of baked in at this point. So as long as the, level of activity continues, I think, I feel even in a downturn, we seem like we've always done well. The houses here on the Outer Cape. It doesn't seem like it's as much of a matter of vacancy, although there is some level of vacancy, but more of a matter of rate. So I think our rates that people charge may moderate, but I don't see them dropping a lot.
no, I wouldn't expect so.
So the short-term rental for 24, the 327,000. What was the actual short-term rental number?
It's about 1,525,000, something like that.
1.5 million.
So, yeah. But it just wasn't counted, so it just floats through mostly to free cash.
Right, it can't be utilized, it just goes to our fund balance and ultimately becomes certified as free cash, right?
So we could have made the decision, and maybe I knew this, but just didn't understand how the nuances. We could have made the decision not to do the 700,
Stabilization fund.
the 700 and whatever the extra approval beyond 2.5 was. We could have funded it with this.
That's right. And then I would have had to come to you to ask for a debt exclusion for the wastewater.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you're,
It's,
it's a matter of time.
You take it from there.
But no, I understand. But asking for a debt exclusion for the wastewater is what you really need.
We're gonna do that
Is
too.
what this says is we really didn't need it for the contract. We could have funded the contract. But
But
we,
when you say contract, what do you mean contract?
Collective bargaining.
the collective bargaining contract.
Oh,
which
that,
was-
the 550.
Right, which that was that was the driver for why we needed that. But what you're telling me is, what this tells me is we could have afforded that. What the driver really is the wastewater.
Right, well, so your statement's correct, Rick. Right, we could have not done the override and utilized short-term rentals to pay for the operating budget. That's correct. That's a correct statement. And we had that discussion with the select board and with the finance committee throughout our whole process last year. And so we've chose, which I recommend as a prudent approach to stewarding these receipts. The other part of that, there's a little bit of a, not a game, for lack of a better word, a little bit of a game that goes on. And this it involves the state and this whole wastewater financing issue. But as far as back in the day, it used to be the federal government for water and infrastructure type projects would come up with, say, 50%, and the state would come up with 25%, and then the town would come up with 25%, and that's how you got things done. Well, federal government's bowed out by and large, so that's gone. And the state's 25% is iffy. And when it comes to wastewater, their position was, we gave you the local option to adopt short-term rental receipts for your Airbnbs, for your short-term rentals. That's our contribution of financing to the town. Don't expect anything else. So if, like, some towns have used their short-term rentals and dedicated to their operating budgets. And so here's the gaming of the methodology here that comes into play. Where do they going to fall in line when you go and plead to the state to fund $5 billion of wastewater work on Cape Cod over the next 10 years? And they're going to say, well, what are you putting up? And they're going to say nothing, because we use the short-term rentals for our operating budget. And what are we going to say? Well, we used 90% of our short-term rentals to put towards our wastewater problem. That's what you told us. That was your contribution. So we followed through what you said. Now we're asking you for more money. Please give us that, because we've ponied up our end of it. So, it's a lot. You're right. We could have done lots of different things. That's how we chose to go. And that's part of the gamesmanship of this whole thing that is at play.
I got it.
I don't know. Here's no-
Taking a breath, Mary.
I know.
So what's the status of the wastewater stabilization fund? Is that the first deposit, the 750?
Yep. And so we'll have an opportunity this upcoming year. I don't know if it'll be our last opportunity, but might be to put another chunk in. for, my preference would be to have at least a couple more opportunities. So we got to figure out the timing. And that's one of the big things I've got to work on this fall. Is we've got lots of projects in the air and some bond anticipation notes outstanding. And when's the Fed going to raise interest rates or lower interest rates? So I got to plan all that out and figure that all out. And when are we going to bond all this stuff? And I kind of got to lock that down because that's going to be the biggest thing that affects this is the timing of debt service. Because if I change if we change course a little bit, right now I'm thinking we're going to do this in the fall. And I'm going to have to provide for some of this in the FY25 budget. But maybe if we wait to the spring, I can get to 26, which gives us an extra year of putting some short-term rentals in reserve. In the back of my mind, what I'm thinking, this is an issue, I think, for the finance committee of the future to think about. I mean, we're years away from this, but I'm reasonably confident we can come up with a funding plan to pay for a wastewater infrastructure implementation one way or another. I mean, nobody will like it because it all costs money, but I think we can do that. To me, my biggest worry above and beyond that is what's the operating cost like and how do we pay for that? And the ramping up of a wastewater treatment plant is always costs, it burns cash up front because it's not like you start, all right, it's a Monday and we got 5,000 customers all start sending us your wastewater and we can charge you a rate for that. No, you bring in a couple dozen at a time and you build up. And for the first 6 months, you've got low flows. And maybe 6 months or a year after that, you haven't hit your flow targets. And then, so whatever rate you might have set may or may not be sufficient. So how do you balance that or make up for that? Did you have to hit the tax rate for that? So that's a long way of saying is the more we can have in a wastewater reserve, the better, because it's going to help with funding the implementation. And more importantly, it's going to help with the startup first couple of years of that plant. So we don't have to impact the tax rate.
So last year you used about half of it, the income, the rental. Excise tax for the wastewater stabilization. Is that what you're thinking of going forward?
Well, let's wait and see what our free cash looks like. It's as good as I'm anticipating. We've got decisions to make. What do we want to do? Do we want to, we have
Put
some,
more into the
we
stabilization.
got
fund.
some, wastewater stabilization is important, but we got some capital needs as well for facility maintenance. Maybe put some, or maybe do a little bit of both, or nothing. I mean, put it all towards, tax levy. Got lots of choices to make. So we'll go through all that once we get to the, next year's budget process.
So once we have the wastewater treatment facility up and running to the point where we're not bleeding cash through it, where the cash is bleeding is back to the taxpayers who are paying the bill, right?
So-
Unless we have a stabilization fund that's robust enough to carry us.
So wastewater operation, just like our water operation, is going to be an enterprise fund. It's going to be a requirement.
Right.
And so, the theory of an enterprise fund is that it's self-sustaining. It's a business type activity. But like a lot of businesses at startup, it's not self-sustaining. But in a town, you got to have a balanced budget. So, if you budget that, your costs for the wastewater plant are $1 million and you can only raise, $600,000 of revenue because you got to ramp up your customer base, that $400,000 needs to come from somewhere. So if we have a wastewater stabilization fund, we could use that to balance it out. If you don't have that, then, default, it's the taxpayers or some other revenue source, right? But that's what we're trying to avoid and kind of scheme out and plan ahead so that we don't find ourselves in the unenviable position of having to do something like that. Well,
Are there do you have any other comments, Rick? At the moment?
No. I've said enough.
I'm sorry.
I've said enough, yeah.
Oh, no. Everybody should have a chance to ask the questions and make their comments.
I know, you know me, I'm always trying to add up what the total is on the taxpayer. Out in 230, it's at $6,274. Plus whenever we would start a wastewater plant and start charging people for that, that'd be an additive on top of that.
I think we all I think we all understand that we are in a situation where our taxes aren't going to be going down, our assessments are going to be going up. And we need to be vigilant in how to proceed as a town. In a, perhaps in a more regional perspective. That's my feeling.
Yeah, and I, when I listen to the numbers and look at them, I don't know whether the additive piece on that $6,274 is $100, $500, $1,000. I have no feel for it.
When you say an additive, you mean for like a wastewater fee if you're for sewer charge?
Yeah, for the average homeowner.
Yeah.
Oh. You're just talking about wastewater at the moment.
Yeah, because it's gonna be, if I'm a taxpayer, it's not taxes, but it's another bill I've got to deal with. And I just don't have a feel for, is it, $100, like I said, $100, $500.
Rick, I totally get your point. But I can tell you though, I mean, this is the discussion we'll go round and around about over the next several years as we talk about wastewater. Because I lived it in Yarmouth and Dennis and Harwich. And this is always the same issue that comes up. And the counter to that, just to put it on the table, you got a valid point, but the counterpoint to that is we all have Title V systems that we're supposed to be maintaining.
Mm.
And if we were doing that, think at the time in Yarmouth, the estimated we were targeting $50 a month max case to $600 a year for a wastewater charge, and we ended up coming in, I think, at like $350. And then what people were doing was measuring that cost, annual cost for a sewer charge against the cost of maintaining their Title V, because you're supposed to get it pumped every year, and that would be an alternative if you didn't do wastewater. If there was no need for central sewer, that perhaps the Board of Health would have to have regulations mandating pumping, for example. And if you did that, then you'd have an annual pumping cost, right? And then ultimately you're going to have to replace your Title V. And I'm in Orleans, I'm in the phase 2 of their wastewater. So I got to now come up with, probably 20, 30 grand to install my sewer connection. Which, obviously I don't like that, but it's going to prevent me from having to replace my Title V in the future. And I no longer have to, and if I was mandated to have an IA, the $350, $500 for the sewer charge is certainly a lot less than the operating costs of an IA system on an annual basis. So those are all discussions we'll be having. So I appreciate your focus on the future and the additive costs. But we just got to keep in mind that, that there's a cost to doing nothing too. And so we got to balance those out.
Right. And I'm not arguing that we do nothing. And I guess I'm not arguing anything when you tell me you're already thinking about how you're going to communicate that in those terms, which is exactly what I was trying to get at.
Are there any other questions? I just want to comment that I know I opened my mouth and was going to ask a question when you gave me a chance, and my question at that time was exactly what Roy asked. It had to do with the local receipts increasing from the 4.4 to the essentially 5.8. But I just have another question at the top under the town operating budget, and you mentioned it earlier, where the collective bargaining that we just went through was for years 24, 25, and 26, meaning that years 27 will be going through it again. And the increase that's shown on here, I'm just wondering whether that's, and I know you've done the prior thing, it's 4%, whether that is enough due to the fact that that is the next time we go through collective bargaining. Am I making my?
Sorry, I don't say that again.
No. I'm looking at the top line, town operating budget, and as I said, the 24, 25, and 26 years were when we had what we've just passed, the override, the 710. And so that means that year 2027 is when we will have another collective bargaining discussion and for the next 3 years. And so what we show here for the town operating budget for 2027 is really only an increase similar to what we've increased it from 24 to 25, 25, 26, 26, 20. I'm just wondering whether that is sufficient.
Well, those 24, 25, and 26 show as 0% increases. It's not because they're zero. It's because I didn't want to inflate the base year 24 because I have the actual numbers.
Okay, okay.
So it's not just 4% in 27. It's 4% plus the increases from each of the,
Oh,
prior
okay,
years.
okay. So that's going to be higher.
right, so it is something higher.
That's what I
The other
figured
thing-
it had to be.
And so, I do want to pat ourselves on the back a little bit and give ourselves a little bit of credit, being aware of the situation that we're in. That all the towns really are in, we trying to be proactive and trying to nip around the edges where we can to make things more palatable. So in our collected bar, I do want to remind everybody, because our employees gave something back too. They got the contracts that were settled were valuable contracts on par with our neighbors. So, there wasn't anything extraordinary about them. But in order to get that, they gave back too. And what they gave back was potentially large step increases.
Mm.
So if a COLA is, say, 3%, you get a 3% raise in a year. But maybe you've moved up a step and you got a 5% step. That means you got a 5% step and a 3% COLA. Your pay went up 8%. That wasn't sustainable for us. And if our employees wanted the level of value in the contracts that they got, what we needed in return was a moderation of those steps. And we got that. So we went from many cases from a 5% step increases to 3% step increases. And we have 2% COLAs. So, but we bolstered the base pays too. So it's not just, that wasn't the only value to it, but after the bolstering of the base pays, which the override funded, our increases are now much more moderated from what they would have been because they're 2% COLAs and 3% steps instead of a 3% COLA and a 5% step. So we're able to, in a perfect world, if you're under Proposition 2.5, if your property tax levy goes up 2.5% a year and we can get 1% of new growth, that's a 3.5% increase in our property tax levy each year. In a, balanced world, I guess, maybe not perfect world. Our wage increases would be 3 or 3.5%, right? COLAs and steps. So your revenue can keep pace with your expenses. Clearly, a 5% step and any degree of COLA outpaces the ability of our property tax to increase at the same level. So we did that. And so that's baked into this next 3 years. And probably we're not, unless they want to give us something substantial back 3 years from now, probably not getting that back in 3 years. So
How did the other towns handle it?
they don't.
Different ways, yeah, no.
I mean, they gave a high COLA plus the step.
Yes.
Do you have any other comments?
Well, you didn't ask it, but I'll answer it.
I'm sorry?
You didn't ask yet, but I'm going to answer it because I know it's on your mind. But I'll point everybody to
Have you figured out my mind
the
already?
page. It's scary. It's page 11, and I don't want to go through it in detail, but page 11 is a page that shows and you want to ask me how it's a little, it makes sense in my mind, but in my logic, I might not be yours, but this is
Oh.
non-property tax funding sources going towards debt service. So this shows how we're applying
Excuse me.
our short-term rental receipts against debt service for the next several years. And also it shows using about $100,000 a year from the family support package to pay for what's the house called? Across the street. Drawing a blank.
Beach Plum?
Beach Plum.
Beach Plum.
So
Sorry.
that we're applying that. So that's, that debt service is being funded by the family support package housing allocation,
Right.
not the tax levy. And it does show in the future an expectation, which might be a little presumptuous, but we're working hard to make sure this can be reality. Is that 25% of our wastewater implementation costs are covered by the Cape and Islands Water Protection Trust. So that's the $600,000 subsidy.
We're going to get that money. I mean, all sorts of other towns are in line to get money for that, and there isn't that much money for everybody that needs it, so.
Yeah.
We're still trying to figure it out. Their projections are that it may be reduced to 16%,
From the original
25.
25.
But we're still, fighting that and trying to get some state money to.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that back to what I said earlier about the kind of the gamesmanship that goes on with these short-term rental receipts and other things is we put up our short-term rental receipts locally, didn't use them for our budget, plus the 2 3/4% that's going to this trust, we're putting that up and haven't gotten anything back from that.
Mhm.
So it's like almost, shaming the state to provide supplemental
Yeah,
funding
yeah.
to, you've put up nothing in your own real dollars,
Then they,
other than giving us the opportunity to raise other people's money. So
Yeah.
we're asking them to, if we can keep that 25% subsidy,
Mhm.
it goes a long way for a lot of the towns, all the towns.
you're on page 11, and I did have another question on page 11, the underneath where you have the beach plum, the town center plaza. Are the rents that we're receiving giving us enough monies? Is that to pay for that
Mhm.
operation?
We have a positive balance in that fund, even with repairs and stuff.
Okay, because we've just put in the septic, so.
Mhm.
Are the rents paying for that?
No. No, the septic was paid with ARPA funds.
Oh, ARPA, okay. And I have another question, Rich, down below under the summary of funding, you have towards the end there of 2030 a subsidy. What are you considering that would be? 600,000?
That's the Cape and Islands Water Protection Trust.
Oh, okay.
In your bottom 2 lines, is that included in our projections for debt service?
On page 11,
Yes.
it's included, this is for the Cape Cod Tech and the Nauset High School.
Yes.
Not in our debt service, but as part of the educational budgets.
So it's included in the projection, just in a different spot.
Well, who pays it?
We do,
Okay.
but it's part of the school district assessment.
Right. Okay.
So that's why if you go back to that page 1 under the educational services line, it goes from 10.8 to 11.9 and then to, almost 13 million. That's the ramping up of the debt service, largely on the high school project.
I have another question on page 13. Anticipated bond issues. Where you have the Rock Harbor dredging, is that going to be changed or altered, I should say, because of the 1.3 million that we're going to be getting and sharing with Orleans for the Rock Harbor dredge?
Yeah, I think that already is a reduced amount.
So this is what we're. The 1.3 and is our piece, and then Orleans, and then the 1.3
Probably
also
coming a little bit better than that, but we appropriated
1.6.
1.6, right?
Mhm.
So. See, good news, Mary.
Oh, I know it's a good news, the 1.3, but I was thinking that since we had appropriated 1.6 and the 2 towns were getting 1.3, that would reduce.
It may.
But when I did this, I, didn't have all the.
Oh, I know you didn't.
but, you
That's
know,
just why I'm,
But something else will increase, so it's good that it's a little.
can't win.
Where you put in a percentage for interest rate, like on water phase 2E, 2.4%, is that just an estimate on your part?
Yeah, but that one's not so
Pretty
much of an
fixed.
estimate because that's what's called a state revolving fund, SRF project. And that's their rate. They can change it because rates are rising, but I don't think they will at this point. Yet, they might next year.
And then Peach Plum purchase 3.5.
It's an
That's it,
estimate.
that's an estimate. Yeah.
It's educated guess based on talking to our bond counsel and financial advisors, but they've issued like money for like projects at about those rates.
And if you can convince them to give us a AAA rating, that would help bring it down. Yeah.
Interest rates you're talking about? I did see that Wellfleet, which used to be AAA, which I could not fathom to the best of my ability, has been downgraded.
Well, you only get rated when you borrow money. So, you have to borrow money to get or lose the rating.
So this is part of next month's discussion, but part of my year-end review is I always at the end of that review focuses back in on rating analyst perspective of what we might look like.
Mm.
And so I list all the, in summary, the high level rating criteria and what we can control and what we can't control and the weight of each of those factors. So one of those rating criteria has to do with what they call the management score. And it's the highest weighted thing that we can control. And that's what Wellfleet got downgraded on there, because management score makes up 20% of the overall score. They must have been rated very strong at one point, and now they're, strong or adequate because of all their financial difficulties. How can you be rating them very strong when they have you can't even find staff? So, and conversely, for whatever reason, we were rated only strong in that category. So with that one bump going from strong to very strong, being 20% of the overall score,
AA to
that
AAA.
should put us right on the edge of the AAA. We'll add in all the reserve building we've done over the last 3 years. I'm hopeful, very hopeful that we'll get it.
Yeah, and the bond call, Mary, where we got downgraded was 6 weeks after I was appointed as town administrator. So one of the factors they looked at is we were starting the borrowing for water, but Sheila had just left after 25 years. And so they looked at, like management instability.
Like the sewers.
I wouldn't think, I mean, after somebody's been someplace for 25 years and
You'd think that they get to retire without
without downgrading you.
Yeah, I mean, it was just one of the factors, but it was in that category, management.
Did that make your day?
It made me, not happy.
No, right. Oh, this world is crazy. Any other comments, questions? On the operating budget?
Mary, I'd just like to make one comment. I am really happy that this town has the foresight to strategically look at projects and programs and the future, rather than just for the short-term benefit of a sugar high, because we gave the taxpayers a bump that comes back to bite us in the butt later on. I think this town is exceedingly well run, and I think they're doing it the right way. And kudos to Jackie and Rich. It's an outstanding job.
Thank you so much. It's very sweet. See, they do appreciate you, Rich.
Just telling her, nobody appreciated me.
Nobody loves him.
Oh, right. I think we are on to agenda item number 5. And that is, the first one is the Capital Projects Committee. And I know we've discussed this before, so I'm not going to go over everything again. But we have the draft charge, if you've had a chance to look it over. And as far as the Capital Projects Committee is concerned, It's going to be consisting of 5 voting members who shall be permanent. One will be the town manager or somebody that person selects. 2 members from the select board and 2 members from the finance committee. And then they have the ability to add additional ones depending upon the project that they're discussing. So as I mentioned, the charter says 2 members appointed by the finance committee. It'll be for 3-year overlapping terms. And I'm opening it up for discussion and for comments and for anybody who is interested in serving on the committee. I know you gave us some information before you're expecting it to start in September.
Yes, I'd
Yeah.
like to do a first convening meeting in September just to pick dates.
Get organized.
Yeah.
And it would be at the beginning meeting once a month. I can't remember now, did I?
Yeah, I think I said minimal quarterly, but I think what I'd like to do is do them topically each month.
Mhm.
So that it's not too overwhelming and too long a meeting. It's one, we do wastewater, then we do water in Rock Harbor, then we do wastewater, then we do, so it's alternating. But-
So the finance committee would appoint 2 people.
Mhm.
And then if there was somebody on, and then the committee itself would decide if they wanted to add somebody, let's say, for the discussion on the wastewater or.
No, how it will work is the staff that is promoting wastewater will join that part of the meeting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that,
And they can pick like a board of health member or something to be a
Oh,
voting
okay.
member if they want.
okay,
Just like when we did with the library, we bring in,
yeah, okay,
The
so,
committee is gonna do the appointing, but
no,
it says
does it?
up to 2 additional voting members may be appointed. for
Yeah,
each
by the
specific
committee.
Project by the committee
Oh,
to serve for as long as the committee.
Holy moly, okay.
in That project.
all right.
We'll go with the recommendation.
so before I ask anybody if they're interested in serving on the capital projects committee, given, or maybe somebody has some more questions as to what it would exactly entail before they decide to get involved.
A question with respect to the overall charge. Municipal project of 1 million or more financed through the issuance of bonds. What happens if you get $1 million grant?
If the project is over $1 million and is financed by bonds, we would add it to the capital project list as a formal project. If it's hard to imagine that we don't get all grant funded projects ever. So it's usually there's a match or there's a capital allocation of some kind. And, if it's close to $1 million or I would imagine that we would include it in the rotation. We have done that before when it wasn't required by the charter, but we do have, upwards of 40 projects going on at any period of time that are engineering or that, we wouldn't bring to the capital project committee. This is just for our major lifts.
So right now, that's wastewater. That's
Water
water,
and Rock Harbor.
Rock Harbor. Three specific projects.
But we've had, in my experience, we've had up to 5 at a time.
Mm.
So I don't think we've ever had more than 5, but
That would be a lot.
And the threshold used to be 500,000.
right.
Bump it up.
But everything's so much more expensive now, it doesn't matter.
Does anybody on the committee here have any questions regarding the charge itself?
What's a multi-member committee?
A
More than,
multi-member? Well, there's going to be 5 members. What do you mean by?
If you look at the last bullet on page 1.
Yeah.
Says the project may only participate that project may only participate as committee members with regard to the project for which they are appointed, provided, however, that where the project was sponsored or requested by a multi-member body.
Oh, okay. So if it was, if it's a CPA funded program, we would invite someone perhaps from that group. Or if it was sponsored by the library trustees, we would invite someone from that group. It's basically the stakeholder groups. And we do have some multi-member bodies that have either regulatory authority like the Health Board of Health, or they have some, you know, skin in the game somehow.
Mhm.
Right.
Do I-
That
do
they're
I-
all public meetings and everyone's welcome to
Okay.
attend. This is just who gets to present, talk, vote, you know.
Thank you.
Do I have any motions, from anybody that regarding, the appointments for the finance committee?
I'd like to be considered for membership on this committee.
Still wanna be on?
I was gonna ask a question.
Go ahead.
I have no history with this town as far as the projects up to
Yeah,
date.
I'm gonna ask you to just talk,
Oh.
I think it's on, but.
It
just-
is on.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Apologize. I don't have any history as far as the projects in this town. Could I be effective? I guess that's the question.
Oh, my God, yeah, because
Okay.
wastewater is, you are literally at the infancy of wastewater.
Okay.
So we're gonna be
Alright.
making
I know
some
Rockpoint's
really.
been going on for a long time. That-
Water,
Yeah.
what I anticipate is the first meeting for water, what we'll do is update you on where we are.
Mhm.
But we've issued all of the last contracts. So really, it's going to be for the next 2 years for water. It'll only be monitoring
Right.
how those contracts are doing. Whereas wastewater, we are literally planning and designing a system.
The
for
one's
the
at
next
towards the
year.
end and one's towards the beginning.
Exactly.
Mary.
Yep.
I'd like to make a comment here too, because I have resigned from the wastewater committee effective this month. I'm not going to any more meetings
Water,
Water.
water.
from water. So we're going to need somebody to replace me, at least for a short term. I've just got to do some other things with my life. And so I don't know whether it's at this meeting, but I think certainly next meeting, it should be on the agenda to find somebody to replace me on that committee. And obviously, I'm not going to be an applicant for the overall capital projects committee. So just like to make that comment now.
But won't the water committee now be handled by the capital projects committee?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think we probably will have one meeting regarding water in September, and then they'll just
Yeah.
roll right into the.
Roll over to the capital.
So I
projects.
don't think it's a big deal, Russ. I think
Oh,
you'll
I
only miss
I
one.
don't
meeting.
think it's a big deal either.
No,
but-
I'm not saying that. I think you've done a great job representing the FinCom, but I don't think, I think it's only one meeting that you'd miss.
Okay. Good.
And Steve, you had a question as to whether you're,
My only concern was
Information.
effectiveness, but you're saying if the wastewater is at the infancy, I'd put my name in also.
You
When
need Steve.
you, yeah, when you get on these committees, it's amazing what you learn. And there is a lot of stuff to learn, and it's great because you get a really neat appreciation for all the work that a lot of people are doing and how well they are doing. So
Well, did you get the sausage being made? Sometimes it's not pretty, as you know.
Can you help them?
Yes.
do I have any other comments, questions at the moment? I'd like to make a motion that the finance committee approve Peter Wade and Steve, do you go by Steve or Steven?
Steve.
Steve Kononchik,
Kanachi.
to become members of the capital projects committee going forward. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
That's Roy. Is there any discussion? All in favor? I. Are you abstaining?
Yes,
Are
so.
are you abstaining?
I
or-
don't
Vote
know.
for yourselves.
You don't have to abstain. You can
I'll
vote
vote
for your.
for Steve.
If you vote for Steve and Steve's gonna vote for
There you
you.
go.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 0.
You can commute.
And Mary, I have heard from some of the members of FinCom will remember Fred Guidi, and Fred
Oh,
Guidi
yes,
sure.
I heard that
has
name the other
stepped
day.
up to be one of the select board appointees.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I think
it'll
I
be
heard
nice
it
to-
at the select board meeting on Monday night. Yeah.
Fred was at the beginning of water, so it'll be nice for him to close out water and start the wastewater thing.
So the motion is passed and Peter and Steve will be the representatives from the Finance Committee on the Capital Projects Committee. And so I guess you will be in touch with them,
Yeah.
email as far as the next meeting, not the next meeting,
First
but
meeting,
the
yeah.
first meeting in September. Well, thanks, Peter. And
What should we do about the overlapping terms part of it?
yeah, I don't know how that works.
Uh,
I'll have to ask.
What are the terms anyway?
Oh,
3
Because
years?
overlapping, we're starting out at the beginning, so I don't know.
Well, you could do 1 for 2 and 1 for 3.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
there's
had
one,
3-year overlapping. terms.
yeah.
You take 4.5, I'll take the rest.
yeah, we'll just stagger it. Maybe we'll have like one FinCom be 2 years.
One be three,
and
Yeah, and the same
select
thing with
board
the select
one for-
board.
Yeah,
Yeah,
work it out that way.
yeah. Do you have a preference for
I'll take either one. Do you?
2 or 3?
No, I'll be around.
You'll be around.
He's younger than I am, so I'll do the 2. I'll do the 2 and you can do the 3.
Well, I'll let the committee
Okay.
make that decision. I'm not going to make
okay.
that decision for you. Okay, thanks, everybody. And
Thank
I'm
you.
going to go on to agenda number 5, item B, that's the Nauset Regional High School. And I'm going to ask Peter to make some comments, but just at the beginning, I did have a chance to go over and sign the beam. There was all sorts of emails back and forth about that and not being able to, or not finding it, or what have you. And so I did do that. Did you have a chance
I
to?
signed right underneath you, Mary.
Oh,
And Jerry signed. I'm not sure who else
I did
signed.
see an email from Jerry that he signed. I missed the topping off on the 17th. I was busy with a meeting or something or other. Did that go well?
Went up, yep, went right up.
You were
and-
there for the
Yep,
set for
I
the.
was there and with, I don't know, 15 others and yep, it was great. Went up, they put a pine tree on the beam and it went right into place.
Terrific.
Is that beam still available for signing?
No,
it's-
no.
It's on top of the new auditorium now.
I think you had, yeah, I think you had until the 16th. Till the 16th. I mean, the beam went up. The
Yeah.
topping was the 17th, so I think it was. You had till the 16th, yeah. So I'll let you.
So, they send out the monthly update, which is pretty complete. Things are still going well. We're on schedule. I don't know, we could say on budget, but we're on budget because we're still within our contingency, but we have run into a bunch of change orders and the challenge is going to be making it to the finish line within that contingency. But hopefully the new, most of the problems are will be discovered early in the process because of the remodeling, part of it. So fingers crossed, we're getting to it, the surprises will be fewer and fewer going forward. But no, they've had great weather. They work, some of the contractors are working 4 10-hour days because of the transportation and everything. And then others are working the 5 8s and some of them work on weekends. So it's an impressive operation.
The pictures you send out with all the updates, it's a clean site.
Yeah, Great Builders does a great job.
And you got a clean site, you got a good job.
Do you know the?
I don't, but seeing the history that they did down the road,
Tech school, yeah.
that's going.
Yeah.
You're doing a good job, so.
Does your committee review every change order request and check off on it?
There's actually a subcommittee that is in charge, delegated to look at the change orders, and but I am also on that committee. So that's pretty interesting. And we get the proposed change order, the PCO, with backup documentation about how they came up with the amount of money for it and why it's needed, and then the OPM, the owner's project manager, recommends, checks over their cost figures and recommends either for acceptance or rejecting, and the architect does the same. And then the committee votes, and then we go to the full committee, the full building committee, and they we recommend, we pass our recommendation on to the building committee. The building committee takes the official vote, and if it's a change order over $300,000, I believe, it has to go one more step to the regional school committee before the superintendent can sign it. And I think that number was picked because things are happening fast, and they don't want to have it go through four committees
Right.
to get the smaller one signed off. That's working pretty well.
So the students are coming back. Will they use the portables?
Yeah, for the next 2 years, they're going to use the portables, just like they did this past year, starting February vacation. And they can basically get half the school in the portables. And so they demolished the other half of the existing school. And then when that's done, September of 25, we'll move into the new part and still use the portables because they'll be taking apart the other half of the campus, which is going to be it's a smaller project. So the phase 2 is a 1-year project, and phase 1 is 18 months, 20 months, something like that.
The construction, Massachusetts construction grant. folk,
MSBA,
have approved another 100 million towards the construction of the schools that are in the process because of increased costs. And that is providing us with 7.2 more million for our project. How is that going to affect the outcome here?
Well, it is, I mean, right now, the school isn't talking about it at all. But our assumption is they cannot exceed the appropriated amount. So that money should, when and if we complete the project and it gets given to us, it should go to pay the debt service.
Mhm.
so we'd have to borrow less.
And that's my other question. Has the bond been determined, the length of the bond and the interest rate? Has that number of years?
Where are we in that? Is it done or is it?
I think there's $90 million bond anticipation note is coming due soon.
In their bond, but aren't they
And they're
bonded?
gonna borrow them.
So we've been going back and forth.
I know
on
you
that.
have, I know, that's why I'm asking,
It's imminent.
imminent.
And that'll be the bond for the whole thing.
Yeah, because it's the second part. So they did one small and they did this large one and now they're rolling it into one, I think.
But I think there will be one more piece. of it.
One more piece at the end, but it's only like 11 million. It's tiny compared to,
And that's when we'll find out what interest rate we get.
Yeah, the interest rate and is it
Well,
gonna be
that's the-
25?
That's the point of
25.
this bond for 90 some odd million. Is to lock in the interest rate.
Mm. Well,
Because you'll get a different interest rate for the 11.
Right.
Right, at the end.
But we're figuring that, even though things have increased, it's still a favorable environment, rate environment.
Mhm.
So. And so things have changed since originally, I think the folks are leaning towards a 25-year,
That's what I remember. Well, I mean, it was
But-
20, 25 and 30 discussion.
but the market's changed, so. Is there any discernible difference between rates between 25 and 30? I think that's where we're locked into the 25. I don't think people are looking at 20. Most likely outcome, I would say, is probably a 25-year.
If interest rates went down, would that be able to be refinanced?
Usually it's 7-year call,
Hmm.
kind of built into bonds, so you can get a sooner call, but it ends up costing you money.
We did that with the elementary school.
Mhm,
Remember, we were able to
Mhm,
save $400,000 a year.
mhm.
But it's a good point. I think I haven't been in school and involved in school bond, but even on our own bonds. And kind of, whether it's the best environment right now to do it or not. Maybe it'll get better, but also could get worse. But I want the 7-year clock to start ticking on a couple of these projects, especially with Town Center Plaza. Because we have the ability to refinance and give us a lot more flexibility. So
Mhm.
we're looking at redeveloping sites and things like that.
They're not adjustable rates, loan bonds, but you do have the option to refinance after 7 years, no penalty.
And I have another question, and I think I might have asked you, Peter, but just at the meeting here, discussion on solar panels for the high school.
Yeah, my understanding is that the MSBA does not contribute to solar panels, so
They don't
the
consider it eligible costs. probably.
eligible cost, right? So we tried to focus on those things that were eligible costs for the project. But the roof, there's plenty of flat roofs up there, and it definitely could be.
And it's facing, some is facing the south.
Yeah, so
That's
I think we
perfect.
talked in the beginning, remember when we talked to have, CVC or whatever help us do that
See that?
after, yeah,
Yeah. It'll be a separate project.
yeah.
But boy, it would make a lot of sense because it's
It's all
almost
electric.
100%
The whole building is
electric school.
electric, like the library.
It's got gas, natural gas backup, but heat pumps and the water heaters are all gas. I mean, electric, sorry.
A lot of people realize those solar projects are actually very expensive. It's not uncommon to not include them in the project cost. If you wanted to build them yourself and put them on your roof. And that's, could easily be $15 million project in that itself, adding all that cost on it.
Right.
Common approach is to have a solar developer come in after you own the building and it's built. They put the panels on and you sign it for like power purchase arrangement or PPA. Where basically they own the panels, they're generating the electricity, but you're buying it from them. But at a discounted
The
rate
reduced
discount rate, yeah. And they're responsible for the upkeep.
for the next 20 years.
Yep.
And it's behind the meter, so you're reducing your costs as it.
Well, I think the library got to net zero last year. And that's been in place since 2000, well, no, we put it in after we built the library,
Yeah, you should.
2017, 2018, somewhere in there.
The old N building, which is one of the ones that's being remodeled, there's electric panel, solar panels on that whole roof
Mm.
from a previous
Oh,
project.
oh,
So they're
really? Oh,
they're still,
That's interesting.
can't remember when that was done,
Oh.
10 years ago,
Yeah,
maybe,
neither, yeah. Maybe when they did the
Eight.
windows or something.
Windows,
I think
yeah.
right around that time, yeah.
Any, we lost Rick for a minute. Any questions regarding the Nauset Regional High School for Peter? Thanks, thank you. Oh, and the meetings are Zoom. I mean, I've attended a couple of them.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you
Just
mentioned
want
that.
people to know you can
Meetings are
do
Zoom.
it from home.
And we've been working on the Nauset High School Building Project website.
Hmm,
We've simplified it. It's bare bones, but it tells you there's all these monthly updates are on it, the minutes for all the meetings. And then as soon as we get the notice for the upcoming meetings, we post it on the website, but they're also been posted on the Eastham, all 4 towns' websites. So, yep, they're open to the public, but usually only 48 hours before the meeting.
Mm.
Meetings are typically for the building committee, they're the 4th Wednesday of the month. Right, no, that's finance committee,
That's just today.
second Wednesday, that's why we switched. the
Yeah, we
finance
switched
committee
because
it
of
interfered
the
with that.
finance committee.
So second Wednesday of the month.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
the normal meeting day.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to go on down to agenda number 5, item number C. The regional education budget discussion on the school budget process. And we've discussed that a couple of times at this meeting. I think it sort of began as a result of some frustration due to the conversation that we had on the budget last year. And you might like to make a few comments on it. I think we all feel that we need to get more involved in some way or another. So that we're not ending up like we did last year without being so frustrated in the process. So I don't know, maybe you'd like to make a few comments.
Sure. I think, first of all, it's very important for the finance committee to have a representative that attends all of their meetings. And I mean, all of their meetings. You can influence, at least in the past, you have been able to influence what they're doing and make commentary on it. I assume that that will remain. But if you really want to get ahead of things in terms of the budget, the only way is to be there and be there each and every time, unless, you can be a member to influence things, and it will help to get ahead of their budget project before they get into the nitty details of it in the first quarter time. So I would recommend that there be somebody from this committee be appointed to be the liaison to that committee. And the sooner the better.
Russ, did you attend the elementary school meetings? Or
I did also.
so,
yeah,
I mean,
I
so
did
that's a
both.
different schedule than the regional.
It is a different schedule from the regional. I found it, for the most part, to be not as challenging as the regional school committee because of all the towns that are in there. But if you want some influence, you need somebody there. If you don't have anybody there, you're going to get what you're going to get. So I would suggest at some point in time that somebody that is really interested in it step up and be at those meetings because they do discuss the budget and they do discuss other things that are of a financial interest that you may have the ability to put some input into. I mean, in the past, you've been able to speak to an issue and get a response to it. I don't think that'll change. So just my 2 cents worth, if you really think it's important.
Now, the elementary school, they meet once a month, like normal, every other committees, and the regional meets once a month on a regular too, or what's that?
Second Thursday,
I'm sorry,
second Thursday at 6.
Right.
is that the regional second Thursday?
Yeah. When they get into budget time, they meet more often. But generally, it's on a monthly basis. Yeah.
Are those meetings held down at middle school, or, I mean,
They used to be here,
oh,
but I don't know if they're in person now or they're still all. I think they're all virtual right now.
They've been all virtual. I don't know, for at least 3 years now. So I haven't attended. any of them. I've tried to attend the virtual meetings, but I was not as conscientious as when I was actually there.
And the Eastham Elementary School, I'm assuming they meet at the school?
At the elementary school. The regional school committee meets at both Eastham Town Hall and Brewster Town Hall. Those are the only two that I've ever attended.
I got a third one for you.
Oh,
So I was on the town website the other day and I saw there's going to be a meeting of a budget, finance and budget subcommittee for the regional school committee. And to organize their meetings going
Separate
forward.
from their regular meeting, so to speak. It's
Yeah,
just for
yeah.
financial budget stuff.
Subcommittee, yeah. And I sent the notice around because I thought it might be a good thing to get our foot in the door and early if we want to try to get, some of the issues we've
Yep.
been concerned about getting earlier notification and anything else, but Steve tried to attend and apparently it was sabotaged. It was a Zoom meeting and it was sabotaged with pornography and stuff and they had to
You're
shut it
kidding.
down. That
Every
happened
once
to
in a
us.
while.
That happened to
It's
us
very
once.
common on the school Zoom
Yeah, on the
sites.
school Zoom, yeah.
really?
Well, it's kids from
Oh.
all across the world
Mm.
trying to
Manipulate.
So they shut
have
it
fun. They're
down.
having
So
fun.
Yeah, oh yeah, they're capable of doing all sorts of things.
I haven't heard about it being rescheduled, but that would be, I think that committee is.
That would be the
that
one
would be
to
the one
probably
that we might
to
be
attend.
most interested in,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So I'll keep my eyes open, but everybody else should too, about when they're gonna meet again.
Any thoughts from anybody?
Yeah, Mary, I have one. Would it be, I was gonna say politically incorrect, but I'll use that term. Would it be politically incorrect instead of us having one person go there, which would be lovely, to have them come in quarterly and talk to us, all of us? Because when they came in at last year, we had like 10,000 questions for them. And I think every single person on FinCom raised 2 or 3 really good points. So instead of having just one of us go and then report back and then whatever, what could we have them come in, especially if they're meeting here?
Mhm.
Quarterly, every 2 months, just to give us an update. So we don't hear, well, we can't possibly estimate the budget. Rich is estimating our budget 6 years out.
Yeah.
Remember
Politically
those 4
incorrect.
towns.
It is.
I'm sorry, Rich, what?
Said it's politically
It's-
incorrect.
it is.
It is.
Like 4 towns, so.
Yeah, it's 4 towns. And I think, but pretty much told you last March when you had the meeting, if you want information, come see us. They weren't going to come to you and they are their own body, not speaking, defending them or putting up for them.
No, I
but
understand.
That's what
I
they'd say,
understand.
but, go to quarterly, ask that committee to go quarterly meetings of 4 different finance committees in 4 different towns, plus occasionally the select boards. That is a bit. So I
Yeah.
think they're going to tell you to go see them and their meetings are recorded, I believe, right, Peter?
Yes,
Now, the representative from our town on the regional committee is Maura, is that is she the only one?
She's the only Eastham rep on that committee.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Does that mean that there's one that is open?
No,
So I don't have I don't know who's on it, to be honest, other than Maura.
currently it's Chris Easley, Wellfleet, Judy Schumacher, Orleans, Moira from Eastham, Tom Fitzgibbons from Brewster, Griff Ryder from
Brewster.
Brewster, Patricia Gemma. I don't know where she's from, Catherine Lonsdale, Richard Draper, Josh Stewart, and Richard Stewart
So Maura's the only one
from
listed
Eastham.
from Eastham.
Yep.
Would, would it be inappropriate to ask her to attend one of our meetings?
I'm sure she'd be glad to,
Mhm.
I'm not sure you're gonna get the level of detail that.
you
No,
know.
no.
I think
know,
the
I know.
actions at these finance subcommittee meetings. That's where
Yeah.
the action happens.
But we would be able to at least hear from her, and if we had some questions, we could pose them to her. I'm not to get answers, but to tell her our concerns of one kind or another. I don't know what people's thoughts are.
I mean, I think what we learned is that they're not required to come and talk to the four committees, and they don't have the inclination to.
Mm,
They want to do it at the end when they have an approved budget. They don't want to discuss an unapproved budget with us. They don't even want to discuss an unapproved budget with Rich and I, let alone you
us,
guys.
Yeah, we're at the,
So I think
Bottom of
what
the
they
totem
said
pole.
last time is if you want to participate, you've got to come to the meetings like the Brewster FinCom does. Isn't that what they taunted us with at our meeting?
Sure.
The Brewster FinCom comes to all of our meetings. So we're like, okay, well, and I'm thinking that, you know, we probably staff wise need to spend some more time going to the regional meetings.
Mhm.
The elementary school is different because it's still a town
yeah,
budget. So
right,
they,
right. It's a
they
totally,
have interaction with
right, it's a
Rich.
totally different
Um,
situation. I agree.
Yeah, so I think really if we focus on the regional and we either, maybe we take turns, staff, FinCom, you know, we can cover those budget meetings and be in on the ins and outs of it, you
Mhm.
know?
Are you sitting at the table at those meetings or are you?
No, but they will, I think they'll give us courtesy if we have comments or questions. I'm sure there's a time for that in the meeting. We can at least write them down and then we can email them to the school at other times too.
Mm.
But it is supposed to be done in public as ours is.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so I think that's really where we have to make our stand. So we could take turns.
Yeah. Are the meetings in the evening?
Yes, 6 o'clock on Thursdays. The second Thursday, and then they had, like, because of the building project, I know they had extra meetings just to approve things last year, but,
Mm.
The regional committee, yeah.
and then I don't know when the budget subcommittee meets. That's a new,
Yeah, that was surprise. I think they did have the first item on their agenda though was citizen speak, so.
Yeah.
I think. mm,
so if you had questions from the previous meeting, you
Right.
could bring them to that citizen speak. We just have to get clever.
We have to
Think
what?
around them, Mary. We have to get clever and think around them.
I'm losing my cleverness.
No.
Where do they hold their meetings?
I think they're all virtual right now on the regional school level because they don't really have a home. They were here.
Mm.
Um,
Did COVID stop some of that or?
I think they were here and we did their Zoom meetings for a while. And then I don't know when they decided to go all virtual. I think it was all coming to the same place, you know.
Mm, mm.
They didn't want to do that anymore, so. And they don't obviously have a place I think they have a meeting room that's big enough at the central office.
I thought that's where they used to have them, but.
Which it seemed to me that would make
They
to
do.
me, that would make the most sense, but
I know, they started there and then they came here for a while and then now they're all virtual.
what do people think? What are people's thoughts on either an individual perhaps, or taking turns, or listening all of, if any of us are available at the time that they have the meeting, zooming in individually and coming back to discuss it at a meeting here. I'm open to thoughts. I don't know what.
And just know that they don't start their budget until long after we do, so you probably wouldn't need
Hmm.
to start going to meetings until what, Russ, like at December, January timeframe?
It could be, but by that time, in my opinion, it may be too late. I think that, what I'm hearing, is that things have drastically changed in the structure of their meetings and the number of people that are appointed from each town. When I was doing this, there were 2 people from each town that were on the regional school committee. It wasn't just one person. So to me, it looks like, and this is just my Machiavellian mind, but it looks like they're making themselves less available and less in the public eye. That may be a little too rough a statement, but that's my sense.
Okay, not to agree with Russ, but I just found Nauset Regional School District Budget and Finance Subcommittee meeting agenda fully remote via Zoom, Monday, August 21, 2023.
And it was last Monday. That's the
Right.
that's the one that got bombed.
Yeah, so obviously they're starting early
That was-
with the budget
Well,
subcommittee
the
meeting.
21st was
agenda
this
was
past
just-
Monday.
They're just, yeah, the agenda was to kind of set meeting dates.
Okay,
Sort of.
and you don't know if they've
I way I've heard about it was checking the Eastham website and it hasn't been reposted on the East.
and that's at 3:30. They start at 3:30.
Oh, it was, yeah, that's why I couldn't make it.
Lasted 10 minutes.
I'm sorry, what, Steve?
It only lasted 10 minutes.
Yeah. Did you, wait,
He tried to attend it.
And
oh.
yeah, all
oh.
hell broke loose.
Is that why it only lasted for 10 minutes?
Happened to a couple of building committee meetings.
They saw you come in the door or something and they immediately
Yeah, it
adjourned.
did, and there are the beginning of our meetings.
Yeah.
happened.
We had to shut one down, I remember. Um.
Oh,
So
It's not funny. Oh,
I know, let's see. I think it's a great idea if we could have a presence at the meetings or maybe get another Eastham representative on the regional committee, but I'm not sure I'm ready to volunteer at this point. I just don't want to bite off more than I can chew. But I know that, and if I had been able to go to that budget committee meeting and maybe I'll make it to the next one. I kind of wanted to bring up the point that a couple of the concerns that the Eastham Finance Committee's had over the years is one about getting the budget information so
in a
late,
timely fashion.
not really even having time to look at it before it was dumped on us. That point, and then there's been a lot of concerned questions about school choice over the years, and we've been promised to get an analysis off and on, and we kind of gotten some half-hearted ones, but I thought that maybe that would be something I would encourage them to look at, if for no other reason, just to find out what the figures really are. Are they making money on it? Are they losing money on it? And it's kind of a big part of the high school at this point, because they're building the school, assuming
Assuming they're going to have school choice.
And kind of tied in with school choices, one of your pet peeves about Provincetown and Truro and and
That's my
how
issue.
that tuition is set and all that. So the kind of items I'd like to see them take up.
Well, from the standpoint of making money, I wrote a letter to the editor of the Cape Codder during this brouhaha over school choice. And I have data that was supplied, and over a 10-year period, they were making $1.1 million a year, which means that Brewster was getting $500,000 a year in. And they had people from Brewster that were arguing the point that school choice cost money. And that's probably the main reason I got back on this committee the last time, because they were putting out, some people were putting out, including a person from Wellfleet, misinformation, taking data and picking a point somewhere and trying to make an argument out of it without having empirical data. And I think we successfully blew that away. I can provide that data. The Cape Codder should be able to provide it because I sent it all to them, and they took a letter to the editor and it made it a featured piece in the paper because of the data that I sent to the editor. Because I proved to her that the information that was coming from the other side was incorrect.
Well,
I don't know when the administration in the regional school system changed from only one representative to a town to two. I mean, 2 to 1. That is news to me. And again, I just didn't look at the Zoom conferences, but they are changing a lot of procedures in the regional school committee, a lot of them. And my guess is they're probably not because they want to illuminate a lot of information.
I guess I was just gonna say that there are people who don't agree with Russ's analysis. And that, the fact that stipend that we get for each school choice student is $5,000, and it's been that way since the 90s, makes you wonder, and the cost of everything going up, if we're really making any money on it. So anyway, it seems like it's be something that the school should know and be able to produce their own data and give a report.
I think, Peter, one of the things that's happening now is they've lost school choice students in that
Well,
school
because of the
because of
things-
the building,
Yeah, the high school.
the high school. And I think that when we finally get a school that has got adequate classrooms for the amount of students that go there. Previously, that school system was built to handle 650 students. That's what it was built for in 1970. It's had as many as 1,200. And still the school excelled. I'm sorry if I'm purveying a feeling of foreboding in the regional school system, but that's exactly what I am. I do not feel comfortable with it at all under the present management.
So I'm going to make a recommendation. That I think that we all agree that we need to get more involved. I'm not sure that there's somebody here that would like to attend on a regular basis every single meeting that may go on as far as budget is concerned at the moment. I think I'd like to recommend that maybe when we find out exactly what the schedule is for the budget meetings that you said they had one, we think maybe that meeting was to schedule the meetings going forward.
Yeah, once
Uh,
they
and-
reschedule that, maybe we can get a sense of how often. the
Right, right.
subcommittee's gonna-
Right, and then maybe what we could do is some of us, depending upon our schedules, could zoom in on the meeting, so we're not attending in person necessarily if people don't have, I don't know about you, I've got 9,000 things going on, so, and I'm sure all of us do too. So, but I think it's important that we do keep tabs and know, and if we have questions, ask them. So would people feel comfortable once we figure out what their schedule is, the budget schedule for the regional school system? Attend on some sort of basis, some of us, depending upon our schedules, we could zoom in. And then after a meeting, perhaps we could discuss what went on at that meeting, and if we had some questions, we could discuss it at this meeting. So that at another time, we could, as a result of that, we could send them the questions to the budget department, not the budget department, the budget committee itself. What are people's thoughts on doing something like that?
Who runs these new meetings?
The budget meetings? I don't know who does run them.
Don't know.
We don't even know.
Budget
that.
subcommittee. Yeah,
Some
maybe,
subcommittee associated with
maybe
the
the
regional
finance
school
group.
system, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's a subcommittee of this, the regional school
right.
board
Right.
plus staff,
Yeah,
like we do.
but yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. What are people's thoughts, Paul or Rick or anybody here at the table?
I think it's a good idea. I'd like to see the schedule. I'd like to, let me see the schedule and let's see how often I can see what's going on in Zoom. And let's start raising our objections early.
Mhm. Rick? You're muted, you're muted, Rick.
Yeah, we've known this, this has been a building issue the time I've been on the committee. So any way we can participate more, and if we can get access via Zoom, that might be the most easiest and flexible
Mhm.
way to get a peek into what's going on.
Mhm. Roy, Steve?
That was the meeting I jumped on.
Yeah.
There was nobody there. There's like 3 people on the line. That was it.
Mm.
It's not very heavily attended
Mm-mm.
by their own group, to be honest with you. And then
Mhm.
we were just setting up the meeting dates at that point before it got disrupted. So I don't know all the issues. I'm learning about them.
Mhm, yeah.
But hey, if you're gonna listen,
Mhm.
why not listen to it? Yeah.
Mhm.
So
What are your thoughts, Roy?
Well, I know last year, budget time, that when we had questions for them, they have a person who oversees education for the whole regional system. I forget her name.
The superintendent?
You doing Brooke?
Yeah, I think so.
Brooke.
Yeah,
She attended the meeting at the library when we met there with the joint meeting.
right. And she was trying to respond to our questions. I guess it's a matter of keeping that contact. How do you do it?
Mhm.
And would she be the right person to approach? I know the new superintendent was really tried to respond to our written questions.
Well, Brooke is the super, she's relatively new. She replaced Tom Conrad.
Right. Yeah.
Well, if everybody is in agreement, why don't we proceed as I've described, and we'll see if we can get the schedule going forward for the budget meeting. And if maybe we see, we don't meet again until September. Maybe at that meeting, we'll have the schedule, and then we can let people know what it is, and then depending upon people's availability, they can zoom in. And then we can come back and discuss any questions that we might have as a result of that meeting. They meet once, well, I'm assuming they meet. Yeah, that's what. Yeah, I think we don't know. We have no answers. We have very few answers to what our questions are. So is everybody content to, try to, I'll try to get the schedule. We'll, discuss it at our next meeting. We can then, decide that we'll zoom in when we have the time, if it's convenient for us, and discuss it at the next meeting. Is that okay with everybody?
Sure.
Okay, okay. That's what we'll do. So I will try to get that information for our next meeting in September, the schedule of their budget. And we'll go from there. Okay, I'm going to go on to item number 6 of the agenda, which is the town manager's report. And I have a basic question. We call this the town manager, but are you officially a town administrator?
No, I'm officially a town manager now. That's why we changed the name.
The charter.
Okay, because we've used both.
So the charter change had
Oh,
the
okay,
name
okay.
change in it.
Part of the.
Yeah,
Okay, so you're actually managing, you're not administering.
evidently.
Town manager. and
I personally think I'm doing exactly the same job that I've been doing, but my title has changed.
Yeah, okay.
The Charter Review Committee thought that was a good idea because it seems to be more that's how the job is being described more commonly these days than town.
It's more
administrator.
comprehensible. Like nobody, I don't think people understand what administration is in
Right.
in
Could
the
be all
same
sorts of
way.
things.
You know, managing seems like
Mm,
more,
appropriate or more
Yeah.
correct. Yeah,
Stronger.
okay. So, does anybody have any questions? I passed out, I want to thank Kayla, and I sent her an email. Thanking her for sending me your report, which says report of the town administrator.
oh, see,
Still getting the bugs out.
sorry. That's because I do it myself with a template.
Right, right.
Anyway, as I said, I thank Kayla. She sends it to me before your select board meetings, and I pass it out to everybody on the finance committee. So I'll open it up to anybody that has any questions regarding anything on the report, or if there's something that you would like to
Yeah, the
talk
only
about
new
before.
thing that I wanted to convey to you is that all of our bylaw changes and zoning changes that passed through this town meeting have been approved by the Attorney General's office. So we just got that.
Did they go over with a fine tooth comb like they did with the charter and change
No, that was-
pronouns and?
That
That
was
took
the
years.
lawyer for the state senate that did
Oh,
that. Yeah, this
that-
didn't have to go through
The
the,
lawyer didn't have to get his hands on it. Good.
they're all lawyers there, but all they're doing is checking to make sure that it doesn't that the changes that we made do not conflict with any state or
State law.
federal laws.
I had one question on the report about the Rock Harbor. So the engineering to redesign the ramp system at the south docks and correct the pitch to make the ramp safer and more accessible, and then using remaining improvement project funds to pay for this work. Was it done per the drawings? I mean, why wasn't the correct pitch built in the first place? I guess is my question. And should the
Yeah,
contractor pay for the
it's an
correction?
extremely, I don't have an answer for you. So I do believe that as designed, it did not meet the accessibility codes. So we are not sure. I mean, you can't blame the contractor for building something that was designed not properly. But we were also rushing with the project. We couldn't, the Army Corps of Engineers wouldn't let us change our permit. So it's really complicated because it was approved in the 70s and they will not let us expand that footprint. And to get the pitch right on the ramp, you either have to go out further with the docks, which we're not allowed to do, or you have to build an 80-foot plus ramp, which we didn't want to do. But now we have come to the conclusion that that's the only solution that meets the accessibility code and can be done. So we have to
The
do
80-foot one.
an 80-foot ramp, which will require us to, have a hoist, lift it in and out of the water. Like right now, we can do it ourselves. So
So how about the designer? Would they have any insurance for errors and omission, or, I mean, so that we don't have to pay for it twice?
it's not that you're going to have to pay for it twice. It's that we're going to replace a ramp that was reused with a new ramp, basically. But the permitting and engineering, we didn't do. We didn't do the in-water work that we needed to do. So we're doing it now. So I would say, yes. Is it some duplication? Yes. Could we possibly go after the civil engineer? Possible, but since we accepted the job and it's been 2 years, it's going to be difficult to do. So, one of my conclusions to this, Peter, is that there are certain projects that we can't rely on our engineering contractors to represent the town's interests, and that we are getting to the point in our the amount and the complexity of some of these projects that we probably should have a town engineer. That's where I'm going with that same concern. But we also want to fix it. So,
Sure.
I'm practical and I want to fix it. And we do have funds left over. It will not require any borrowing. So we're going to try and fix it.
It's probably similar to a situation we had at the high school project where you'd spend as much money trying to get the money out of the insurance company with lawyers and expert witnesses as you would to just buy
Right.
the
You
damn
kind of,
ramp.
chalk it up to a certain amount of experience. And I will be honest with you. I mean, we were trying to save money. So we didn't want to pick the most expensive solution at the time. We wanted to try and pick a solution that would work for, 20 dock spaces. It's not like huge.
It's
Yeah.
tiny, yeah,
So,
but it's because of ADA. It's-
yeah, and it's important. It's important that it's safe, right? So that's, more the point. And the dredge will help us move the docks off the sand, hopefully, but we still have some issues. It's a tricky area, really
Sure
is. So it's back.
Great.
So this will probably be dealt with, this new project, and we'll bring it to the Capital Projects Committee because we're doing the dredge anyway. So the
Incorporate it?
permitting for this will be going along the winter times cycle. So we'll just add that to the committees.
Can you use any of the harbor master monies that weren't used for the building?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're going to use.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have 760.
750 or something?
Yeah, I think it's 760 something. Yeah. So.
Any other questions associated with the town manager's report? I have a couple. The town hall restoration here. I know you got a quote. You went out for a request for proposal and you got, I guess, 2 quotes. Tim Klink and.
No, we had many.
Oh, you have many?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. For some reason I thought I heard. you.
Well, we had sub bids. The sub bids came in. I think there were 8 or 9 of those. And then for the general contractor, we had 2. You're right,
Yeah,
only
yeah,
2.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's Tim Klink. right?
Yep.
Yeah. But
Coastal.
it came in, even that one came in quite a bit over the 680 that I think the CPA folks approved. It was on the town warrant.
Yep.
So what's happening with that?
So it came in, we had a shortfall of about $94,000 and we are paying for that out of another maintenance line that we have because we can. So moving the money for that so that we can sign the contract.
Yes, when you say a maintenance line, what?
Like town hall maintenance or repair or upgrade, or we have
You have
an
enough
account.
money in there to add to the 680 that was approved?
that's correct.
Okay. So that should be started? I mean, Tim Klink has been, that has been approved.
The contract has been
Contract?
awarded and we're now negotiating a contract. So we have not signed a contract with him yet. We're meeting with the architect this week, so it'll be
Oh,
a
okay.
month or so, I would say at least.
One of the things that was really concerning to me was on your second page on ongoing issues where you're experiencing problems with the HVAC at the fire, the police, and town hall. When the work was done at the police station within the last couple of years, wasn't the HVAC system looked at, or wouldn't that have been looked at when all the other work was done?
No, because we did a reno of the police station basement. So that was a complete redo of the lockers and the air circulation HVAC for the basement. So there was new air and dehumidification and drainage and stuff done for the police station basement. So it wasn't directed to the air in the rest of the building, and it's not total HVAC, it's all air we're having problems with right now.
With air conditioning?
We have ancient compressors here that we have not replaced, partially because it's an engineering issue. We don't have a place to, they want to move them out of the attic where they're problematic and down into the body of the building, and we don't really have a spot for them that's close to all the ducts, or I don't understand it perfectly, but that's been a struggle for us. So we upgraded all the thermostats. Now we have to do the compressors and AC. And, you know, we have aging buildings, and that's one of the reasons why we have made the commitment to do a total assessment and capital plan of all the buildings. So basically, we've hired a company to come in and do soup to nuts, the age of everything, when it needs to be replaced, so that Rich can create
Okay.
a capital plan that will be realistic, because, you know, as I said, when I came on board in 2017, we had at least 10 to 15 years of deferred maintenance,
Oh,
no
I
capital.
know.
So we haven't really caught up. I mean, we've done our best, but some things have remained. Like we replaced fire panels. They were all huge. That was a huge investment, but
Firm will prioritize also and set budgets. for-
exactly. So I think it's really important. We had them come and do some buildings in 2017, and it was really helpful because they spread them out over a 20-year period. So it really gives you a good sense of what's coming up and when things need to be replaced. And we didn't have the money to implement that plan even in 2017. So we're still catching up, but we're going to do it this year.
No, I think the idea of having a facilities assessment probably should have been done.
Yeah.
Before.
Yeah.
Because I'm with you, with the only way these buildings are gonna stay
Last.
buildings is if they're maintained properly. And if we don't maintain them, then it's gonna cost us even more to replace.
Right. And sometimes it comes into like, you know, handicapped accessibility, we have those issues too. Sometimes it's structurally just complicated how you retrofit new technologies into an older building. So it's just, but it's a matter of at least knowing where the problems are ahead of time. But I can't honestly tell you that we didn't know that we had HVAC problems in this building, because we've been trying to figure out those compressors and having people look at it for years now. So
So the assessment, they'll also hopefully look at the idea. So, you know, there's a possibility you could switch to heat pumps.
Hmm.
So that's the kind of thing they'll look at, right? To see if,
well, CVAC is doing.
That's part of our,
and then there's also some incentives, but I don't
it's
know. if
part
they're
of our
for-
Green Communities program,
Mhm.
so that they're looking at all that.
Yeah.
We had a big plan, but because of the HVAC, we're only moving forward on some of the smaller things right now. But they're going to, as part of this assessment, look at the HVAC, and those would be part of the recommendations for most likely the Green Communities grant. We got 150 some odd thousand to replace.
Yeah, because you wouldn't
improve
want
energy
to,
efficiency.
you wouldn't want to put in new compressors that are AC only if you're going to eventually be switching over to heat pumps,
Well, I think what
do both.
the assessment's probably gonna show is the maintenance and repair schedule for what's existing.
Mhm.
But working with the Green Communities program is what they're gonna
Replace.
give us suggestions for improving efficiency of
Right.
of what's existing, right?
And those will happen at the same time.
Will the work that's being done under that, what we were just describing, will that? What we're trying to do here with the HVAC, would that impact what we're trying to do under the restoration or whatever you want to call it?
It may affect one piece because one of the pieces, it's a small thing though. One of the pieces was to move the compressors out, build a pad for them, move them back and build a little fence around them. And I was like, let's not do that. Because we don't need
Because
to
we-
build a new little cement foundation and a cute fence for something that may not be here next year. So.
Mhm. Okay,
So that's the only thing that it impacts right now.
and I have one other question, not to do with that, but do we have a memorandum of understanding with Orleans regarding the daycare program that we used to have at the Council on Aging here?
Yes, that's correct.
And is there space for anybody that is, are we limited to how many people can go there? Because it's obviously costing us some money.
In the budget, we did a number of days and it's
I mean,
robust.
in the week, is that what you mean?
It's a number of days in the whole calendar year that
Oh.
we've set aside funds for.
Mm.
So I think we figured out that 2 or 3 people could go part-time at any one time for the whole year.
And if there are more people, I mean,
Well, there's a capacity issue with.
down
Orleans.
down in Orleans. And we're not planning on having anything like we used to have at the Council on Aging here.
No.
So if there's no space down there and somebody needs it, that's it.
Then we have to, we have to talk about it. But right now, at least we have not run into a situation yet where someone's needed it and we haven't been able to
Oh,
get it.
okay.
for them.
Okay, because I know somebody who's looking into it.
Yeah, it's a good program.
Any other questions, comments? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
That's
Second.
Russ and that's Roy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7-0. It is 6:20. Our next meeting is September 27th. The 4th Wednesday of the month, again at 4 o'clock.